Welcome back to the deep dive. It is late January 2026.
It is.
And if you've been watching the commodities ticker or even just scrolling through social media this month, you might have felt a bit of a shift. The eyes of the energy world, well, they're not just on the usual suspects right now. They're fixed on the Horn of Africa.
It's a fascinating region, and honestly, it feels like we are right on the edge of something massive there.
Massive is absolutely the word. We're talking about a moment that could fundamentally rewrite the script for two very specific, very unique partners.
Right.
Today, we are diving deep into the energy partnership between Somaliland and Taiwan.
Which, on paper, sounds like an odd couple, doesn't it? You've got this East Asian high-tech powerhouse and a specialized territory in the Horn of Africa.
It does sound like a bit of a random draw.
But for the longest time, this partnership was, well, it was theoretical. It was diplomatic handshakes, photo ops,
Yeah.
a lot of memorandums of
It's
understanding.
a lot of paperwork.
A lot of paperwork.
Yeah.
But here we are, January 2026, and the whole vibe has changed. The rubber is finally hitting the road.
Or, to be more accurate, I guess the drill bit is hitting the dirt.
I like that. Yes.
And before we get into the politics of it all, because the politics are just wild, we have to establish the sheer scale here.
Yeah.
I think when people hear new oil exploration in a frontier market, they assume it's a small speculative play.
Sure. Maybe a few million barrels, something local.
Exactly. So let's just drop the headline number right out at the gate. We are looking at an onshore block that is believed to hold as much as 5 billion barrels of crude oil resources.
5 billion.
5 billion. That is not a rounding error. That's a change the GDP of a nation overnight kind of number.
It absolutely is.
Yeah.
And to put that in perspective for everyone, that puts it in the league of some of the major historic finds in Texas or, the North Sea. And that's really the mission of this deep dive. We're looking at a document titled, In 2026, the Energy Partnership Between, which lays out the execution plans for this block, the SL10B SL13 block.
Okay.
And we need to parse this out because it shows how this isn't just a story about pulling hydrocarbons out of the ground. This is a pivotal moment that could reshape Somaliland's whole economic trajectory and, maybe surprisingly to some, Taiwan's entire energy security strategy.
So let's set the scene. It's January 2026. The atmosphere is tense, but it's excited. How did we get from, we might drill someday, to the drills are turning right now? Because these projects, they usually drag on forever.
They do. There's something we call the Valley of Death in big infrastructure projects. You get the permit, but then you spend 5 years arguing about funding or environmental impact, and the whole thing just quietly dies.
So what was different here?
And understand the immediacy of now. You have to rewind just a little bit to late 2025. That was really the acceleration point.
Late 2025. So that's when they crossed the Rubicon, so to speak.
Exactly. The momentum just shifted gears completely. It went from a passive plan to a very active operation.
Wow.
And there was one voice in particular driving that narrative shift.
Who was that?
Somaliland's representative to Taiwan, Ambassador Mahmoud Adan Jama Galal.
Okay, hold on. Why is a diplomat the one announcing drilling schedules?
That's a great question.
Usually that comes from, I don't know, the CEO of the oil company, an operations director. It seems odd for a political figure to be giving us the timeline.
It is odd, and it actually hints at the unique nature of this whole deal, which we'll get into.
Yeah.
But Ambassador Galal came out and he explicitly stated that the partners, CPC, Taiwan, and General Energy, were preparing to begin drilling operations in early 2026.
He put a public timestamp on it.
A very public one. And that puts the pressure on.
You can't really walk that back without losing face.
Immense pressure.
Yeah.
When a diplomat promises a date, he's putting national credibility on the line. And since we're sitting here in January 2026, well, early 2026 means right now, the clock has struck 12.
That's what really jumped out at me reading this report. It's the immediacy of it. We aren't looking at some 5-year projection. We're talking about heavy equipment on the ground today. It feels like the anticipation has been building for a decade, and now the curtain is finally rising.
It is. And the stage is very specific. We mentioned the block code earlier, -SL10BSL13.
Which I have to say sounds less like a place and more like a password you'd need to reset.
It does.
But let's unpack the anatomy of this thing. What are we actually looking at? Is it just a big patch of desert?
So SL10BSL13 is this massive onshore block. And onshore is important. Offshore drilling is incredibly expensive, technically very complex.
Right, you're dealing with deep water, weather.
Exactly. Onshore is accessible, it's cheaper, but you don't just drill anywhere in a block that big. You need a specific target. And if you want to sound like an industry insider this week, the name you need to drop is 2SN1.
2SN1. So why is this specific, well, the belle of the ball?
Because it's the flagship priority for this whole 2026 campaign. Exploration is a game of probability. You look at seismic data, which is basically an ultrasound of the Earth.
Okay.
And you look for these traps where oil might have accumulated. 2SN1 isn't just a random stab in the dark. It's a high-potential prospect that's designed to test multiple reservoirs at once.
Test multiple reservoirs. Can you break that down for us? Does that mean there are different pockets of oil at different depths?
That's exactly it. Think of the ground like a layer cake. Sometimes oil is just in one layer, say the sponge layer. But in what's called a stacked prospect, you might have oil in the sponge layer, the cream layer, and the jam layer further down. 2SN1 is designed to punch right through all of them.
So it's more efficient.
It's way more efficient. It's a proof of concept for the whole area. You get more shots on goal with a single drill.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. High efficiency. One hole, multiple chances to hit pay dirt. And the numbers attached to this one well are pretty staggering on their own. I was looking at the resource estimate and saw this term, P-mean.
Right, PBN.
Now that sounds like something from a statistics nightmare. Can we translate that into English?
It's actually pretty straightforward. In the oil industry, nothing is 100% certain until you actually drill, so they use probabilities.
Okay.
You might hear P90, which means there's a 90% chance of finding at least a small amount, or P10, which means there's a 10% chance of finding a huge, massive amount. The jackpot.
So P90 is the safe bet, P10 is the dream scenario.
Exactly. P-mean is the probability mean. It's the average weighted expectation of what's down there based on all the data. It's the most realistic middle ground number for planning. It just smooths out the extremes.
So it's not the fantasy number and it's not the pessimistic number, it's the realistic expectation.
Correct.
And the P-mean for just this one well, 2SN1, is 650 million barrels.
Just let that sink in. 650 million barrels in one prospect.
That is wild. I mean, most onshore wells in the U.S., like in the fracking fields, they might produce a few 100,000 barrels over their entire life. This is on a different planet.
It's a giant. It's what we call an elephant in the industry. And if you zoom out, if the total potential of the block is 5 billion, this one well could unlock over 10% of the entire region's potential in one shot.
So if 2SN1 hits, it basically validates the geology of the whole block.
Precisely. It turns that theoretical 5 billion number from a geologist's dream into a bankable reality. It proves the kitchen is working, so to speak, that the Earth generated oil and trapped it there effectively.
Okay, so we know what they're looking for. Let's talk about where they're looking. Because finding oil is one thing, getting it to market is a whole other logistical beast. You can have the best oil in the world, but if it's trapped in the middle of nowhere with no roads, it's pretty much worthless.
And this is where the logistics get really fascinating. The drilling site is located roughly 150 kilometers from Berbera Port.
150 kilometers? In the grand scheme of oil pipelines, that's not actually that far, is it?
No, it's actually quite a sweet spot. If it were right on the coast, you'd have all sorts of other issues. If it were 1,000 kilometers inland, the infrastructure costs would be insane.
So 150K is manageable.
It's manageable. But Berbera Port is the key here. Right now, as we speak, Berbera is the import hub. It's where the heavy equipment, the drilling rigs, the casings, the drilling mud, everything is coming in through there.
It's the gateway.
It is. But think about the future. If 2SN1 is a success, Berbera flips. It goes from being an import hub for equipment to an export hub for crude oil. It becomes the lungs of this entire operation.
That dual role seems critical for Somaliland's development. You're not just building a road to nowhere.
Exactly.
You're building a corridor that serves the exploration now, but that same infrastructure becomes the economic lifeline later.
Precisely. It's efficient capital allocation. You're not building a deep water port from scratch. You're using a strategic asset that already exists and just scaling it up. And the local impact of that, truck drivers, engineers, support services, it creates a whole microeconomy just around the logistics.
So we have a timeline now. We have the target 2SN1. Let's talk about the players, because this is not a solo mission. Who exactly owns what in this SL10B SL13 block?
It's a partnership structure that tells a really interesting story.
Yeah.
We have two main commercial entities splitting the pie. First, you have the operator.
That's General Energy.
Right, General Energy. They hold a 51% stake.
Yeah.
Now, being the operator is a specific legal term. It means they're the ones technically running the show, managing the contractors, handling the day-to-day, ensuring safety. They're the ones with the hard hats on.
And Janelle is known for this kind of thing, right? They're not an Exxon or a Shell. They're a bit more adventurous.
They're an independent. They specialize in these kinds of frontier markets. They go where the super majors are sometimes too cautious to tread. They made their name in Kurdistan, so they're comfortable in complex geopolitical environments.
Okay, so they have 51%.
Just barely a majority,
Oh.
which leaves 49%. And this is where it gets really interesting for anyone interested in geopolitics. That 49% working interest is held by CPC Taiwan.
Specifically through their subsidiary, Upais Somaliland Corp.
Right. And for those who don't know, CPC isn't just any private company. That is the state-owned petroleum corporation of Taiwan.
So let's pause on that. You have a private risk-taking company, Genel, partnered almost 50-50 with the state-owned energy arm of Taiwan.
Mm-hmm.
That implies this isn't just a commercial bet for Taiwan. If it was just about the money they could buy shares in Shell, this is different.
Oh, it's policy.
Yeah.
It is national strategy disguised as a business deal.
Mm.
But before we get to the strategy, there is a third player we can't ignore.
The landlord?
The landlord, exactly. Where does the Somaliland government fit into this picture?
Right. They own the dirt, but they're not drilling.
They're the regulator and the protector. The Ministry of Energy and Minerals is overseeing all of this. But there's another layer to their involvement that the report specifically highlights. Security.
I saw that note. Security assurances. That sounds a bit ominous.
It's not ominous, it's just realistic. I mean, we have to be honest, this is the Horn of Africa. It can be a rough neighborhood. In emerging markets, physical security is the foundation of any investment. You can't drill if you're worried about your crew's safety or your rig being sabotaged. The fact that the Somaliland government has reportedly provided specific security assurances for the drilling locations is a massive signal to investors.
It's them saying, we have skin in the game. We will keep your people and your assets safe.
Exactly. It de-risks the entire project. By guaranteeing security, the Somaliland government is effectively becoming a silent partner in the operational success. They're providing the shield so Genel and CPC can wield the sword.
Okay, so we have the mechanics of the deal. We know who's drilling and where. But I want to zoom out and talk about the why. Why are these two specific entities, Taiwan and Somaliland, doing this dance? Let's start with Taiwan. Why are they in the Horn of Africa looking for oil? They're a high-tech island. Shouldn't they be focused on wind farms?
They are focused on those too, but this is a classic case of what we call energy security strategy. Think about Taiwan's economy. It's built on high-tech manufacturing semiconductors, chips.
Right.
That requires a massive, constant baseload of energy. You can't run a chip fab on intermittent power.
And they don't have that energy at home.
They have almost zero domestic fossil fuel resources. They import over 97% of their energy.
That is a precarious position to be in.
It's an incredibly vulnerable position. If supply chains get disrupted by a blockade or regional crisis, the lights go out in the fabs. So for Taiwan, this partnership isn't just about making a profit on crude oil.
No.
It's about securing an equity source of supply. They're trying to diversify where their energy comes from so they aren't reliant on just one or two unstable regions.
It's hedging their bets. If the Middle East supply gets choked off, they have an asset in Africa.
Exactly. And expanding their footprint into the African hydrocarbon sector is a big strategic play. It gives them a foothold on a resource-rich continent where China has traditionally been the dominant external player. It's about long-term survival for their economy.
That makes total sense for Taiwan. It's defensive. Now, let's flip the coin. What about Somaliland? You said earlier that for them, the stakes might be even higher.
I would argue they're existential. For Somaliland, a discovery of this magnitude, especially with a partner like Taiwan, is transformative on two levels, economic and political.
Let's hit the economic side first. That seems obvious. It's oil money.
It is obvious, but the scale is what matters. If Tucson 1 hits that 650 million barrels, and if the block eventually yields 5 billion, we are talking about a GDP multiplier.
Wow.
It brings in revenue for infrastructure, for education, for healthcare. It moves Somaliland from an economy based on livestock, which is really vulnerable to drought and climate change, to a resource exporter economy.
It's diversification for them, too.
Correct. But the political angle is, to me, the most fascinating part.
How so?
Somaliland has been fighting for international recognition for decades. They function as a state, they have their own currency, their own elections, but the world doesn't officially call them one.
Right, they're often called the country that isn't a country on the map.
Exactly. Now, one of the key metrics for a functioning state is the ability to manage your sovereign resources. Can you secure your borders? Contracts, can you protect a multi-billion-dollar project?
So if they pull this off,
If they pull this off, they prove to the entire world that they can operate at the highest level of industrial complexity. Success strengthens their case globally. It shows they're a stable, reliable partner. It's a message to the UN, to the African Union, to Washington. We are open for business, we are secure, and we are a functioning state.
that is fascinating. So it's drilling for oil, but it's also drilling for legitimacy.
Perfectly put. Foreign direct investment FDI is a form of de facto recognition. If a state-owned company from Taiwan is willing to put hundreds of millions of dollars into your ground, that counts for something.
So here we are, January 2026. The drills are likely spinning as we speak. We've got the Tucson one, well, testing that 650 million barrel theory. Taiwan's looking for security. Somaliland's looking for a future. It really feels like this is the year.
It is the decisive year. We have moved past the potential phase. Potential is great, but you can't put potential in a barrel and sell it. You can't run a power plant on potential. 2026 is the year potential has to turn into proof.
It's the difference between holding a lottery ticket and actually cashing it in.
Exactly. And everyone is watching to see if the numbers match.
Before we wrap up, I want to leave you with one final thought, something for you to mull over.
Okay.
We've talked a lot about the numbers, the 650 million, the 5 billion, but I want you to think about the map. If the Tucson 1 well hits that target and the oil starts flowing, how does that physically change the geopolitical map?
That's the big question.
Think about it. You have Taiwan, an island nation recognized by few, suddenly holding a secure energy lifeline in Africa. You have Somaliland, an aspiring nation recognized by few, suddenly holding the purse strings of a major energy reserve.
If both of them achieve a new level of self-sufficiency through this one block, does the world have to stop ignoring them?
Does economic reality finally force political recognition? That is the multi-billion-dollar question, and one we might see answered sooner than we think. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep your eyes on Berbera.
Stay curious.
And we'll catch you in the next one.